So her dad and I also split right before she turned 1. So that was like another big challenge of like, okay, now that she's getting a little older, now what do I do? How do we move forward?
Hey guys, as you're tuning into this episode of Mom Talks with Krista, today's interview is with a friend of mine from high school. I've actually known her since elementary school. Her name is Sarah Cox, and she's the owner of Featherprint Media. And she talks a lot today about being a business owner and adapting to becoming a mom during that, and through that, becoming a single mom. And different tools and resources she's used to really help her excel and to be the best she can be. And we really talk a lot about mom guilt, about self-care. And she's got some amazing tips that I think actually anyone could really benefit from. Just really ignoring the negative voices and doing things that make you happy, breaking the cycle. I think, a lot of times we're told to, be yes people, say yes to everyone. I think setting boundaries is really important. So we talk a lot about that. We cover a lot of really cool things. So I was just so excited she came on. So here's my interview with Sarah. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning in today, guys, to Mom Talks with Krista. I'm so excited. Today I have Sarah Cox here, and I've actually known Sarah a really long time. We actually went to elementary school together and high school. And so we recently reconnected, and I'm so excited to have her on the show to kind of cover all kinds of topics. She's a business owner, she's a mom, and we're just going to kind of talk about how she balances it all. So welcome. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
So just to kind of start, do you want to just tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we'll kind of get into everything else?
I'm Sarah Cox. I have been a photographer for the past 10 years, and it's been quite a journey. And I've recently shifted gears into doing more media agency work. I had this idea right before the pandemic. And it was just a good time to start transitioning my business when photography was kind of slow. So I've been doing that for about a little over a year now, but obviously I kind of dabbled in it throughout the past 10 years as a photographer. I have a daughter. She will be 3 on Saturday. So that keeps things very interesting. And I live in the Chicago suburbs.
Awesome. Very exciting. So yeah, I remember I can't believe it's been 10 years since you've been doing photography. Because I remember when you kind of started out, and now it's like everywhere. So it's so cool to see.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was just something that kind of happened by chance. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but in high school, I did the yearbook club. And so I got to yeah, I got to get out of class and go take pictures. So it's always kind of been something I was interested in. And then the guy I was dating at the time, his brother was a photographer, and a lot of his friends were. So I just kind of got more and more into it. And it really just kind of fell in my lap, and I got really lucky with referrals, and it just really snowballed. So
That's
yeah.
amazing. And so then you said from there, then you kind of went into the media side of things, and because you own multiple businesses now. So you have your Featherprint, right? And then now your media business. So
Yeah.
what is
So
that? Yeah, what's that like?
I actually merged the two together because technically photography, media agency work, it's all kind of under the same umbrella. So now I'm operating under Featherprint Media. I do obviously still do photography work. I have clients who had to reschedule weddings and stuff from last year that have carried over to this year. But I've just started to take it a little easier on photography. It really keeps me away from my family and my life, trying to plan if someone has a wedding and they're contracting out for a year, 2 years. I really have to plan my life around that, which is scary, and it can be overwhelming, which, obviously I did it for so long. I really did love it. But this type of work is something I've been passionate about actually since I graduated. So I started my business while I was in college. And then once I graduated college, I got a job as a real estate operations manager. And I focused a lot on marketing, so real estate marketing. And I did that for multiple real estate teams throughout the past 10 years. I also have my real estate license, but I don't use it. So that really just got me interested in marketing and realizing like what is possible. I also realized where a lot of people don't do it well. And especially in the real estate community, it can be very challenging. Just like photographers, realtors are kind of a dime a dozen, and you have to really sell yourself and promote yourself in the right ways. And I was realizing how frustrated so many people were with trying to market themselves. So that's why I transitioned. And during the pandemic, like especially, it was so nice to be able to be home with my daughter more and still have clients coming in. I got multiple social media management clients throughout the pandemic, which was like kind of shocking that people were like, going to spend some money on marketing, but they needed it. And, there were some industries that were super busy throughout, that whole year. It's kind of why I moved in that direction.
Yeah, no, it's cool. And I think too, like with the pandemic, it like made a lot of businesses shift, like businesses that like either weren't on social media or like you said, kind of like lacked in that marketing social kind of atmosphere, kind of like, okay, people can't come to our, store or, come in person. So what can we do? So that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I love the
Yeah.
marketing stuff since that's where I'm at.
You do.
I love
Yep.
marketing talk. It's fun.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's kind of shift gears a little bit to like, so when you had your daughter, how did like your business kind of adapt and change, or how did you kind of manage that while owning your own business?
It was definitely a challenge. I remember like that was the year I actually started using my real estate license too. So I was also trying to do real estate as well as manage my business. And it was a total whirlwind, just trying to navigate everything and, be there for my family and work really hard. And so it was a lot of, already there's the lack of sleep, but then there's a lot of late nights involved and stuff too. And obviously I did my best to take some time off. But I think about, I want to say like a month after I had my daughter, I had a wedding that I had to shoot. So I had to navigate the whole pumping on the go, and especially for a wedding, pretty much impossible to try to find the time to pump. And so that was interesting. It's like I was very upfront with my clients about it and let them know that like I might have to step away, but you have to be very strategic about it. And obviously, like there are times where you're just going to have to go like 8 hours without pumping, and it's not enjoyable at all. That was a whole nother whirlwind for sure, but I made it work. I did end up leaving real estate. It was something, the whole selling side of it was not something I felt was authentic to me. Obviously, I really enjoy like the real estate market and doing the marketing for different agents, but maybe it was that period in my life, too many changes, too many things at once, that kind of set me back there. Adjusting to, being a business owner as a mom was rough. Sleep was probably the one thing, my biggest struggle. And then when she was old enough, we did end up sleep training, and that was like the best thing that I ever did. And I know, there's obviously different takes on, on sleep training, but she's very independent in sleeping, now, which I'm like forever grateful for, that I'm not losing sleep continuously.
Right.
For the most part. There are days, but where I have to worry about that because she did so well as an infant with that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And it's like there's business owner, and then it's like, a job like you're talking about being a photographer, you're on your feet the whole time, you're running around. Like I've been to a lot of weddings to see, a photographer. I mean, it's nonstop. And so I can only imagine being a new mom, and like, that's something too, like you're saying, that's something you planned out probably like a year in advance. So you don't necessarily know like, oh, my daughter would be a month old at the time, or, you can't always plan for that. So
Yeah, I did do my best with like family planning and, trying to make it work. And like, I was like, okay, if we're going to be trying, I don't want to have to worry about, a wedding. So I was trying to not book as many. But obviously, a couple, a couple were snuck their way in, because she was born in May. So summer weddings are definitely hot in the Chicago area. So
Yeah. And so you
yeah.
mentioned like you were able to take like a month before you had like a wedding. So were you able to kind of like schedule in other like kind of like maternity leave time, or how does that work with owning a business? Because we have a lot of moms, like we have a private Facebook group, a lot of moms that are kind of that own their own business or want to own their own business, and that's probably something that's crossed their mind, like what do I do around that time, or how can I manage?
It definitely takes a lot of planning. I mean, I don't think I planned well enough, like I said, because I took on another job. And, as I was on a real estate team, and they were very supportive of like picking up, where I needed help. But, there was a lot of guilt in that as well. Like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm, trying to be a new mom and do all these things like, and then my team has to pick up the slack because I didn't plan well, so I did carry that with me for a while. Definitely lots of planning. Thankfully, like my mom lived about 10 minutes away from me. So I did have some help. All of my best friends at the time too, like we all had kids around the same time. So it was nice to be able to have them to like lean on for support. But I definitely didn't probably take as much time as I should have. I was always kind of working still here and there. But I look back and I really do cherish the downtime that I had, because the type of person I am, I always like to go and, be actively working, and I love what I do. So that really pulls me to kind of always be in that busy like production mode. And so I mean, there are times where my daughter was a very challenging baby. She had a lot of GI issues. So being able to be the one that was taking her to her appointments and just like, snuggling with her and just taking naps with her, I do definitely appreciate that, because I'm not that way at all. And looking back, I think I would have been very upset if I, was just like pushing myself to overwork and like sending her to the babysitter or, her grandma at any chance that I could. Yeah, it was definitely nice. So her dad and I also split right before she turned 1. So
Mhm.
that was like another big challenge of like, okay, now that she's getting a little older, now what do I do? How do we move forward? And, how do I find that help and support when I have to like jump in and find, way more work now because I have to support myself and my daughter. So that definitely was a struggle, and like a whole new transition that got thrown into the mix. But definitely like having her dad's support in the beginning and having him work, and it made it possible for us. I can definitely feel for moms who don't have that support and don't really, they have to jump back in and they have to work. Or if you do own your business and you don't have that support,
Mhm.
what do you do? So I know everybody's situation is so different, but it definitely helps, I think, to have at least a small little community and network to like, fall back on and ask for help. So
Yeah, definitely. I think the community and sport is so important. And so what was that like for you? Like initially, like, being a single mom and having to like adapt now to this, like you're saying, like you're just figuring out, being a working mom, business owner, and then, you get this thrown into your life where it's like, okay, now I have this whole new obstacle to kind of overcome. So how did you kind of overcome it? And or you might still be kind of like, figuring it out too. And, what are some kind of tips you have for moms out there listening that are either maybe about to be or kind of in that stage where they're kind of doing things on their own?
it definitely was a transition to move from we had so many things going on in that first year. So when my daughter, I want to say she was like 7 months old, that's kind of like when I had this bomb dropped on me by my ex. And so we did our best. We tried to work it out, and I just, I couldn't do it, but his dad was really sick. So we ended up moving in with his dad. And so I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel like I can do this, or, like make this shift right now on my own. So I kind of like stuck it out. So that was like, we moved from being on our own, then moving in with his dad. And then I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So that's when I made the decision to leave. I ended up moving in with my mom. So it was like a lot of different transitions in that first year, especially too with my daughter. Kids, they are adaptable, but they definitely can sense that, that stress. The one thing that I would say made it so much easier is realizing how loved my daughter was, and seeing that, okay, she, when she's with her dad, she's in really great company. Everybody there really loves her. And then also, living with my mom for a while, knowing that my mom had, my back and loved her and supported her while I was trying to, navigate all of this. And from an advice standpoint, just surrounding yourself with people who really genuinely love you, want what's best for you, and understand your, and have empathy for you and your position. Because truth be told, I think there's a lot of people who will tell you, don't do this, don't do that. Like I had people say, don't leave him. Like you should try to work it out. You have to trust yourself at the end of the day and find those people who will support you. And setting boundaries was like game changing for me, because I never grew up with that. I never knew what that even really meant. So trying to navigate what boundaries were, and how to establish them, how to be firm, especially with an ex, like. And so it is messy, but I would say like those were like my biggest strengths in those moments, were like, the setting boundaries, and then just making sure I found people and surrounded my people, like myself, with people who loved and supported me and my daughter. Because, when you're going through a hard time, it's so easy to kind of just get lost in what's going on, and get, put yourself in this overthinking, anxiety, or depressive mode. And by staying surrounded and connected to people who care and want to make sure you're okay, and, can help you also forget that you're going through these hard things, it definitely makes a huge difference on, your mindset. And I think a lot of my support system knew to where I lack. And it's like, I one of my probably weaknesses is that I overexert myself, I overpromise, and it's hard for me to make, to carry that around with me as I'm like trying to do all of the things, and then make that move too. So it definitely helped to have those too.
And I love that you bring up boundaries, because that's something too, like I didn't necessarily grow up with. And then like when you discover it, it's the most amazing thing, because you realize like people's energy and like how they act around you, it really has an effect. And having that boundary and saying like, oh, I can say no to such and such. I don't have to be the yes girl all the time. It makes such a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that also plays into a lot of the mom guilt that a lot of us deal with, like trying to set a boundary, even around your kid. Like you feel like you're a bad person. You feel like you should be saying yes. You feel like if, like for me, I personally, I really enjoy what I do. I really enjoy work. And, I've had a lot of snide remarks, like saying like, oh, you shouldn't be working so much. You should enjoy this time. And I swear that's probably the number one thing I hear as a mom, like, oh, enjoy it. It goes by so fast. And it's like, I get that, but we're doing our very best to make sure that we are happy ourselves. So, if you ultimately know what makes you happy, then you shouldn't feel guilty for that. And I think that's definitely where boundaries come into play. And, I've been in therapy like on and off my whole life, but something my therapist told me that like really stuck with me was that if you feel guilty, then that means you did something wrong. So she's like, if you're sitting there having this guilt about doing what's best for you, you didn't do anything wrong. So there's no reason to sit there and question yourself of like, okay, why do I feel bad about this? Like, did I really, like, did I harm anybody in this process? No, like, I just did something that was better for me and my child. And that's something that I've been telling myself now ever since I heard it, like, constantly, because it the guilt sticks with you. And if you keep like replaying that, it's just going to mess with you even more. So just, that definitely was something I loved
Yeah.
from what she told me. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point too about, kind of almost like ignoring or like the negative thoughts that people or negative things that people say about your life and how you choose to live it. Cause it's like, it's a almost like older mentality where you put everyone before yourself and then the mom's like left in the dust, or, the mom's kind of left last. And then years later, you're like, oh, I never, gave myself love or kind of did something for myself. But it's like, you're going to do all these things and your daughter's going to see like, oh, wow, like my mom, took care of herself and she was working for us and provided for us. And so I think like, people that say those comments, it's like, they don't understand the full grasp, or, everyone's lives are just different and people have different needs for what they want to, I guess, fulfill in their life. But
yeah. Yeah. And I think that something I realized is that, like, obviously nothing ever against our parents, or, because they obviously were doing the best they could. But a lot of what our parents' generation were taught, especially like my mom was a single mom, it's almost like self-neglect. Like you're just constantly neglecting your needs in order to provide for your family, which then obviously leads to depression, anxiety, all of these issues. And it's definitely something I've had to work to overcome, because I've neglected a lot of myself, my needs, my boundaries, all throughout my life, because I didn't have a role model in that. Trying to make sure that I establish that type of lifestyle for my daughter, so she sees like, okay, it's okay that mom needs to take a break right now. Like if I'm frustrated, I tell her, I'm like, mommy's really frustrated right now, I need to go sit down and take a break. Like I don't think I ever saw my mom do that growing up. So, and now my daughter does it too. She's like, I need alone time, I need a break. So
really,
it's definitely a good way to move. But it's hard. It's definitely a challenge. So
yeah, definitely. But yeah, it's like you said, I think kids emulate what their parents do. So you have to be able to break the cycle or look inward and be like, okay, well, is this actually making me happy? So it's cool that you're kind of like, okay, well, this is what, we're going to do here now. And, show that self-love and self-care and taking time for ourselves is good. So I think that
yeah.
a lot of moms need to hear too, because it definitely still happens a lot where they don't, take the time to, take that few minutes to care for themselves or do something they want.
Yeah. And we hear it all the time, like, oh yeah, just self-care. But it's like, self-care isn't just like, taking a shower or, being able to, like, those are basic needs. Like we are allowed to have those things. So, not carrying guilt around those things and just really figuring out what you need to make you happy is, that's the biggest thing that you have to try to keep reminding yourself as a mom.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So you kind of talk also about some like different tools and resources that you've used just in your life to kind of help keep you sane during like all the, different craziness and everything going on. So yeah, for moms listening, what kind of has helped you?
One thing that I swore I would do is really, like, as soon as I had my daughter, well, not as soon as, but shortly after I had my daughter, I was like, I am going to go to yoga teacher training. I didn't want to be a teacher at the time, but I was like, I know how moms get, I've seen it. And I don't want to lose myself in this process. Like, I don't want, so that was one thing, is just finding something I really, really always wanted to do to reconnect with myself. And honestly, it happened at the perfect time. Like I was going through it throughout my divorce. So it was just this really transformative experience for me personally. Obviously, my yoga practice is another thing that I use as much as possible. Working out also helps significantly with just mindset. But I meditate daily, even if it's just like a quick 5-minute guided meditation. Like there's so many on YouTube that, you could find. That is definitely another one. Something that's recently helped me though, when I shifted my business, I joined on with, he's a lifestyle coach, like a leadership coach. And I joined on with his team, and he had me run through this program that I'm helping him write a book for. And it was the most transformative, like eye-opening experience for me. This program, it's called Ritual Reboot. And the guy I work for is Nathaniel Salas. And it's this whole program that helps you just like reset your like addiction with dopamine, and not realizing, like, as a mom, how much time I'm even just sitting right next to my daughter, just scrolling on my phone, or, and I get those moments we need to check out. But just really reconnecting with ourselves, our lives. Like, I mean, that program too, it helped me realize, like, I wake up in the morning. I used to be very good about like keeping my phone across the room. Like I've always been kind of conscious about it, but just these little habits that build on themselves over time, our addiction to caffeine and all of this stuff, that it's like, how do we overcome this, and how do we get back to feeling good? And, you might be aware of it, but you don't know that, like, the steps to take. So like when I ran through his program, I was like, holy crap, like it's kind of geared more towards entrepreneurs, but like he really helps you like redesign your day and like get back into like creating like a system almost, which for me, I thrive on routine. So like, I don't know if you probably can't tell, but like my calendar's back here. I have two calendars, one's a weekly, one's a monthly, but my weekly is like completely color coded. And it's between that and then like my Google Calendar. I used to hate like electronic calendars, but it has saved me so much, because now it's like every week I get in the habit of looking at my Google Calendar, transferring it over to my weekly calendar. And it like just really helps me like keep those systems in place. So it's like, I'm very aware of what needs to happen this week. Even my self-care is built into it. So like I do time blocking. So it's like, I have 3 non-negotiables every single day that I have to hit. It's meditation, it's moving my body in some way. So yoga, exercise, and then either reading or journaling. And those 3, like, those are my staples that I have to hit every single day. And I make sure that I block them in. Obviously, there are days where 1 or 2 don't happen, and that's okay. But just realizing and like, assessing for the next day, okay, this is where I fell short yesterday, so this is what I need to change for the next day. And that was something like I never really even considered doing, like kind of just like this check-in with yourself. Like, I know journaling and stuff is supposed to help, but I kind of gear my journaling towards like prompts, as opposed to like self-reflection of like, how did the day go? So that was something I learned in this program of like, okay, where can I optimize tomorrow? Where did I fall short? What are my top, biggest tasks that I need to tackle, and how can I do it? So that, those little tools just kind of, like I said, the habits build on themselves, but the tools are helpful in order to make sure like your systems are in place, because we're human and we're going to, there are times where we're going to fail, but having that system to fall back on. It's like when you diet, they say it doesn't work because it's not sustainable. So it's just creating more sustainable habits for yourself over time, where when you do fall off, that 80% of the time you're going strong, and that 20% you can fall off, but how to get back on, because so many of us don't know how to get back on when we fall off. So
yes. Yeah, no, I love that. I'm a huge calendar person as well. So you were like talking, I'm like getting excited. I love like calendars. I love planning, kind of like a joke here at the office, how much I love planning stuff. But I love that you do like the time block for like personal stuff, because I think it's so true. Like we're like, we have a doctor's appointment, we put it in the calendar, or we have a meeting, we put it in the calendar, but like our self time or like our self-care time, we don't. And I think if more people looked at it as like an appointment with themselves, like I think that's how it should be looked at. It's just as important as a doctor's appointment or a meeting at work. So it's huge.
Yeah, it definitely was a game changer for me. And, and like Google, I have like a work calendar, a personal calendar, my daughter's calendar, and you can like turn them on and off, obviously, but it's really cool to just be able to see it scheduled in. And then, you get the reminder and you're like, okay, I got to go do it. Even if, for my exercise, it's 30 minutes or 20 minutes, or I just go on a walk, like just making sure you schedule that time in for yourself. It definitely is a game changer.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
so just for like moms listening that either have dreams of starting their own business or kind of like doubting themselves about their own business right now, what would you tell them to like kind of encourage them and get them started?
I mean, you just got to take the first step. I've always been somebody who doesn't have it all figured out. And people like probably look at me and they're like, oh yeah, she's like got it all. Not even close. Like I tend to be impulsive. I'm like, I want to do this. Like people like, you look at me, I've done real estate, I've done yoga, I have my web development certification, I'm an English, like I have my English degree. Like there's so many things that I've done that it's like, I don't have it all together. I just do it. And then maybe it's not something I use in the future, but it just like I did it. If that's what I wanted to do to make me happy at the time, then so be it. I don't regret any of the stuff that I've done, but it's literally just getting over that fear, just jumping into it, diving in, don't look back, like just go for it. There's so many things out there and so many free tools for people that can get you started anywhere. Like I think on my old photography site last year, I did a blog about like all of these free places you can go for learning. CreativeLive.com. That was one I used often as, photographer, but they have free classes that go out live every day. Like, so you can learn, like there's so many places that you can learn new things without having to ever pay for it, which is awesome. And that's like, I just want to keep tapping into my potential. And I know that so many people are happy with, a calm, peaceful life, and that's great, but for me, I just, as an entrepreneur, you have that, like that hunger to just keep learning, keep growing, whether it be self-growth or whatever. So I would say never stop learning and just take the first step. Don't try to talk yourself out of it, even if it's scary. Like, the best place for you to grow is in that place of discomfort and figuring out, why you feel like, and tap into that. Why are you feeling uncomfortable? Why is it scary to you? What might be holding you back? Because sometimes like realizing those things alone are just, monumental for your self-growth and development. So
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing advice. I think that's awesome because, yeah, like I said, there's so many moms that listen or are in our group that either are just in the cusp of starting something or they talk about wanting to, have more time at home with their kids and don't know how to make money. So I think that's awesome. You gotta go for it. Make that first step. So much out there.
Yeah, there is. And I think too, like if you are scared of starting a business as a mom, or you're not even sure of where to start, like it can be so overwhelming. I mean, I can't tell you how many, I look up one thing and I get 50, Instagram ads a day. That's like $27, buy this, $37, buy that. And, sometimes I'm a sucker and I pay for it and I never touch them or I'll sign up for something, a free webinar or whatever. I never use it. And then you get, these emails constantly from all these people. And then you're questioning yourself. You're like, oh, well, I'm a failure because I didn't even go to that free webinar. And it's like, but you have no skin in the game if it's free. You have no, like $27 sometimes to someone. It's like, okay, it's not that big of a deal if I paid for that. It's like, you have to sometimes, take that initiative to invest in yourself, whether it be a free class and you actually schedule it in if that's your form of investment. But, just making sure that you are constantly like just willing and ready and, just the negative self-talk, like it has to stop because you'll never do it. There'll always be a reason not to, and it will never be the right time. So,
Yes. Awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome. I think that's a great way to kind of end this on like a positive note like that. But I do always like to end these interviews with like a fun thinking question, I call it. So if you could have a billboard made today where you could share one tip with moms everywhere, what would you have it say?
Probably that becoming a mom definitely changes you. So make sure you make time to rediscover who you are.
I love that. That's awesome. I think that really like sums up to like what we kind of talked about today. So I think that's perfect. And for anyone that wants to connect with you or kind of, see what you do, where can they find you and what other kind of resources do you offer?
So I have 2 Instagram accounts. You can find me at Featherprint Media, or you can find me at Sarah, SARAHL.Cox on Instagram. I use both. Obviously, Featherprint Media is more for business. And then I also share a lot of like my personal stuff publicly on my personal one. I do use Facebook as well, but those are probably the best places to find me for now.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on. This was awesome. It was just cool to catch up and talk and just kind of, get some inspiration for the moms in the group.
Thank you so much, Krista. It was good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. This was really awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, if you found this or any episode of Mom Talks with Krista helpful, please like, comment, subscribe, and of course, share it with your friends. We release new videos every single Wednesday, and our new podcast is out every single Thursday. So lots of different ways you can catch us. And of course, if you're not following us on our socials, go ahead and follow us there. We've got tons of new content for you every single day. And finally, if you're watching this and doubting yourself, you're doing a great job. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.